Let's see. Hello, my name is Rick Moore, and I'm your host of Write. And today I'm interviewing author Carina Spears, further exploring her book, Paladin's Honor. I think you'll be very interested in what we have to say today about her book. Are you ready to go, Carina?
I am.
All right. Now, Mirabelle goes to the temple to find out Devon's plans and get him to leave the Thieves' Guild alone. Thieves' Guild alone, right? Instead, she got angry and confronted him. I find this a fascinating scene. What did he answer her?
She comes up. She's been trying to get a head of steam going to confront this guy, messing with her plans. And he's like, I'm here because I want to be the same as you. He's free to do whatever he wants.
Okay.
And implores her. This is not what she was expecting.
Now, she is determined to chase him off, saying he will only cause trouble. But what is his retort to that?
He makes it clear the only trouble is being caused by her and her friends. And underlying everything, she doesn't want him to see her running around with them. She doesn't want her parents to know what she's really doing and stuff. She's hiding her activities from everybody. So she would like him to go, but he's not being very cooperative.
Has he seen her already with Thieves' Guild?
He hasn't officially, not that he realizes, because they managed to catch on that was coming. And they have passwords to make sure that nobody sees them together at that point, that they break up. Oh, yes. So they did a whistle and or a password there that told them scatter, and they know not to run from each other. They're not little kids. So some look like they're browsing the window and stay put. Others start walking down the boardwalk. Another goes across the street. You're not in the same spot, but nobody's running.
Wow. All right. She says that he won't be around forever. What is his surprising answer to that?
Devon tells her, well, then she'll probably be in jail or dead. And she's floored that he's so blunt with her.
Wow. So jail or dead? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. She's robbing people, and he's like, well, if I'm not here to stop you and Theo's not here to stop you, you'll probably wind up in jail or dead. That's right. You keep going the path you're going.
Does Devon know that she's robbing people?
He knows she's up to no good. He's got a pretty good idea, but he hasn't found out who she's running with, but he knows what she's pretty much getting into.
Okay. Now, when Mirabelle stalks off, she has an unusual reaction. What is that? The dynamics of it.
Well, she's very angry when she's done with that conversation. She's hating Devon for making her think and feel all these emotions that she had locked away so hard in the back of her mind. He and Theo are both in service to Rise, so it's making it worse because she sees the temple as having taken them away. And she's still immature at this point. She's not ready to face the larger truths yet. All she's doing is trying to protect herself. All her decisions are about protecting herself. When Theobald, who managed to kill the vampire, left town, that was the only one who could save them in her mind. Her parents can't help her. Nobody else in the town was able to do anything. Only Theo was able to. So she felt naked and exposed when he left. So she looked for the next strongest person, and to her, that was Jarek, because he's very confident.
Right. How old is Jarek, by the way?
Jarek's like 16, 17. He's full of confidence, not necessarily as much skill, but he's doing his best to imitate what the previous leader was like in his version of it, without the full adult understanding of what the Kosh did.
Right.
So he found
off, though. Did she cry?
Oh, yes. Mirabelle goes off. She's sorting through her past fears. She's sorting through her past pain. She's depressed. She's angry. She's fearful. She despairs. And she's crying over everything. And a lot of it's crying for herself and the things she lost in the same event that nobody let her experience. Nobody let her express
herself, right? Nobody let her express herself.
No, she was supposed to stay out of the way, and she never got to express it. Not honestly. It was
How,
now it's over and we got to get on with it. Theo's okay now.
how
Well,
old was she at
Mirabelle's
that
not.
time? How old
Hmm?
was she at that time?
She was 12 when that all happened.
Oh, she's a young girl then.
Yeah, she was a young girl still. She didn't understand everything that was going on, and she thought the adults would take care of it. And when they didn't to her satisfaction, it's led to this driving force in her as she's gotten older.
How old was Theobald when he killed his first vampire?
He was 15, 16.
15 or 16. Wow.
Yeah.
That's young, huh?
Yeah. Oh, he was just lucky as all get out. It was the vampire came in, smacked the blade off this cheap old sword he bought in town because he didn't have a weapon.
Right.
And it was in a wooden hilt. Thing broke, left a shard, and he just charged with what he had left, not actually expecting anything. And the vampire certainly wasn't expecting anything.
Right.
And they both realized after he got the blade stabbed into him that that was the death knell for the vampire. He staked him.
Wow. But when Sasha died,
Mhm.
Theobald blamed himself, didn't he?
Oh, yes.
Mirabelle patiently waits to help him
Mhm.
with dealing with the blame, but the townspeople take action. Mirabelle's kind of sequestered, but the townspeople take action. What action did they take? And what was Sasha's reaction to that?
Oh, Sasha's reaction. That's a good
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
Well, at first, the townspeople, they try to have Theobald talk to the new priest and priestess of Rise that are coming to town. The town have had a meeting after this event. They've
Okay.
agreed that they're going to work together to pay for a temple to be put in. This isn't just a freebie. They have to
Really?
make sure they're large enough and can afford the fees to keep the temple running.
Right. Right.
Now, they'll get some help, but they have to actually support that temple as well.
Ah,
So they've accepted it, and a new priest and priestess are coming into town, and they've come early just to try and deal with any other undead in the area. They don't know what all this, going to come out with one
right.
showing up,
Right.
especially when they're intelligent ones. So they send Theobald to them, and they're very savvy. This is Magnus and Lila, or Magnus and Lily. You meet them in the story. But while they understand people and they can read him, he doesn't know them, and they know that you can't force somebody to feel better. Healing has to come in its own time.
That's true. That's
So,
true.
so they tell him, our door's open day or night, and they mean it. They truly mean it. He could come at midnight, he could come at 4 a.m. They would answer the door for him and help
They're
him.
very supportive of him, right?
They're dedicated to this. But while they say that to him, he doesn't know them. He's never met them. So he gives them the same platitudes he's given everybody else. And then he just goes back to lying on the grave with Sasha. But Sasha does know that her beloved is going through a lot. And rather than going to join the divine in the heavens, she decides to stay here and aid him as best she's able. Seeing the new temple going up and judging the character of the people there for herself, she decides that having a mission or a purpose would help Theobald heal from this the most. So she causes the flowers in the graveyard to bloom out of season. And they're the same flowers that are sacred to Rise. So when he takes those fistfuls and he goes looking for a match of what this symbol is, what does this mean? He sees the placard of the temple that's being built, and it
Right.
has the device of Rise on it, and it has those flowers. And he talks to them finally. And when they hear his story and they see the flowers and stuff, they all agree he must be called. Now the thing is, he thinks he's called, but he's kind of got pushed, and it causes him serious conflict later.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What do you mean when you say that Mirabelle now had a sneaking suspicion? It was because Theobald was being honest with her.
Theobald had been putting on a cheerful face for everyone.
Right.
He's giving a performance in front of others so they won't worry about him, because they started going, maybe you're spending too much time in Sasha's grave. Maybe you should just, take up with somebody else, or maybe we can just help out at the farm. We'll find you something else to do. And he didn't want them to worry. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. So he started play acting, but he didn't do that with Mirabelle. His voice would go flat. He'd be sarcastic. He'd be bitter. And she knew that, he's showing her something else. So they're close. She believes he's going to come out of it if she just stays steady for him.
Right.
She doesn't understand that he's putting on a customer service smile or a customer service kind of voice for everybody, but that's basically what he'd been doing. But for her, it was always the real Theo, even though it wasn't the Theo she remembered. She knew he was hurt.
Now, Mirabelle felt lost when Theobald joined the Order of Rice.
Mhm.
And is that because she lost a protector?
Well, definitely. First off, that's her big brother, and they spent a lot of time together growing up.
Right,
They're two peas in a pod, and he'd always watch out for her. He liked being around his sister.
right.
That's not always the case. You know, they have their fights, but they actually enjoyed being around and doing things, exploring in the land together. And even if Theo got married, he'd have been in town and she could see him. With them becoming a paladin, he got sent all over the country and she never envisioned a future where he wasn't around. So she felt horribly lost. And then Theo, on top of that, was the only one who killed the vampire. The priest in the town couldn't help. The townsfolk didn't go. They were afraid. Only Theo went, not even her parents. And when the one person who could defeat the vampire left her, she felt completely naked and exposed. The world is dangerous and she knows it. So she sought out the next person that could possibly be a protector. And when the Thieves Guild says, well, if you join us, you can walk the streets at midnight and nobody's going to touch you. You give them the right password and they're going to leave you alone. They know you're one of them. And she liked that.
Now, the priests of Rice were fighting men too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why was it that Theobald was the only one that could kill the vampire if the priests were fighting men?
The priest that was there was not a priest of Rise.
I see.
He was a traveling priest,
Right?
dedicated to one of the others. He could give him a little bit of advice, but undoubtedly weren't his specialty. It's probably one for Anjasa, to be honest, luck on travels and trails.
Right.
So he did what he could, and he sent off a missive to call for aid right away. That's what he could do. He made sure that a message went out immediately, but he knew the odds of them saving Sasha were small. They'd save the town, but they wouldn't save everybody.
In those days, communication was hard, right?
Oh yeah,
A long time.
It takes a while. Yeah, we didn't have any of the paladins, so they can't even send an emergency message with their steed.
Now, I guess I've got a question that why did she damn Devon along with Theobald?
Well,
When she's doing her self-examination, she isolates the two of them, Devon and Theobald, separate from herself.
Right.
And she just withdraws. It's got an artificial barrier between herself and them. But why did she damn them?
She hated Devon for making her think all those things that she had walked away and feel all the emotions again of that moment. I mean, it was intense for her too. They're both in service to Rise. The temple that took her brother away from him makes it worse. He's currently just a face of the temple, not her friend.
Right.
She's still immature at this point, and she isn't ready to face the larger truths yet.
I see. Where was Devon at the time that Shasa was killed?
Devon would have been still in the training grounds. He was a young man himself. He's probably 17.
Wow.
At that time, he couldn't do the full Victor Paladin work, although he'd started going in the field since 15 and helping fight undead. But he would have just still been in the training academy. He hadn't met Theobald at that time.
And Mirabelle's got this conflict, right? She sees Devon and Theobald in the isolated world and herself in the real world. Doesn't right? How is that possible? Because Devon and Theobald spent all their time fighting the undead and vampires and undead and ghosts.
Doesn't get much more gritty and real, right?
Yes.
She acknowledges that they are fighting men, but it's not like now where we have a bunch of films showing us what war is like on the battlefield.
Right.
So she is on one hand trying to trust that Theo and Devon have been trained and they have special powers and they can overcome anything. Even though the scriptures talk about paladins and others who did not make it throughout the years. For her sanity, she's kind of pushing it to the side. And the rest of it is she's seeing the nitty-gritty world and the ugliness of it every day. The people down at the bottom. She doesn't see their lives at the temple as having meaning. When they're in the field, it has meaning. When they're in the temple, they're being coddled to her mind. You've got warm beds, you got food all the time. You don't know if the streets are like, you don't know how hard it is. She's railing against the latter while not being fully aware of the former. She
Ah.
tries to believe they can overcome anything, but she's just as afraid underneath for them as she is for herself. And she doesn't want to acknowledge it.
Now take a step, sideways step.
Mhm.
At this point, you mentioned that Devon would tell stories about other things he had seen. What other creatures are in this world? Because your world's a fascinating world.
Oh, yeah. It's a heavy duty fantasy world. You're going to see dragons and unicorns, brownies. There's also whales, giant insects, wolves, giant large cats, that kind of thing. We
Really?
also have races that are different from humans. We have centaurs and lizard folk, and you'll see them in Paladin's honor. You get to see a couple that are being paladins.
Right?
But there's also merfolk and kobolds, goblins, naga, lamia, and elves and things. Then we have tons of undead. You see them fighting skeletons and zombies, but it has specialized zombies. There's liches, there's wraiths and ghosts. I mean, you hear about Sasha, but she's definitely there as a ghost. So lots and lots of interesting things for them to run into.
So you've constructed a fleshed out world, right?
Yes.
Good. That's fascinating. All right. Now, to get back to Mirabelle.
Okay.
Felt that Devon only visited them out of duty.
Mm-hmm.
But was that really true?
No. Devon came because he wanted to. Theobald, when he joined the academy, made fast friends with him and had him come with him on the holidays before when he was coming on the tour of duty that direction.
Oh, really?
Yes, and introduced him to his family, and his parents were like, "Oh, if you're friends with Theo, you're welcome at our house. You know, you're friends of ours." And he wasn't expecting such a warm welcome, but it was
Right.
very consistent. Whenever he came, they were just as happy to see him as they were Theobald, even if he came alone. So he started to see it as his home away from home. And even Mirabelle doesn't really know that. The families kind of mutually adopted each other, at least Devon and Alaric and
So he felt like
Aelin.
he was part of the family, right?
Oh yeah, he felt he was a very close, like a close cousin.
He didn't visit them only out of obligation.
No,
Visited
it
because
was
right?
even in the book, it's a pleasure for him to get to stop by.
Ah,
He's supposed to, but it's one of those things on your checklist is like, oh, good, I get to do this instead
right.
of oh, I have to do that. And he was happy to visit with them.
Now, this is fascinating to me about
Mm-hmm.
Mirabelle thinking that she's part of the real world and Devon and Theobald are not. I can't let go of that because Devon and Theobald fight the undead,
Mm-hmm.
vampires and so forth, and undead zombies. And they're fighting that all the time. But she's got this picture of them as part of the ecclesiastic world almost,
Right,
where she's in the tough world.
right. And she doesn't understand how hard the ecclesiastical world is.
Right?
And a lot of people don't. You just see them in images, you see them on Sunday or whatever for your or Saturday, however your temple works. And she thinks they're just there singing hymns of praise in a clean and warm and nearly sterile environment.
Right?
To her, they're in denial of the ugliness of the world. But what we're going to see in the future books and what she hasn't seen yet is that these are people who are serving their divine, and they do see all the bad in the world. They just try to fix it and not add to it. You can
Really?
have you can have a priest that's got a baptism in the morning, a marriage in the early afternoon, and a funeral in the evening, and that's a heavy emotional load. You've got to switch between them and be ready to celebrate and cry in the same day.
Wow.
It's not easier, but we'll get more glimpses for the cleric and paladin's lives and the priestesses as we go along.
Would you say that Mirabelle is mature, immature, or in between?
She's in between. She's trying to find herself, and this is very much a coming of age book.
Right?
She's slowly going from being immature and needing to have some sort of parental or adult or at least a strong figure leading to finding who she wants to be and stepping out as someone who's owning her own choices in her life. It's a growth curve for her to where she's going to be her own leader.
Being the woman she wants to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And she looks at the people around her and decides which kind she wants to be. Because when you're younger, you're trying on hats. You try to be heavy metal, or you might be light jazz, and you try different things, and you're trying to find you. And when you finally settle on it, that's where you take that step forward. And that's what she comes to.
All right. The result of Mirabelle's self-examination, examination of her relationship between Theobald and Devon. Did she come around to Devon's way of thinking, or did she not move the needle?
He moved her. His words did move her. Dredging up everything she'd been repressing since Theo left, it floored her, quite frankly. But that one talk isn't going to change her world, and she simply wasn't ready to face all of it.
Right.
It was just too much all at once, and she had to shut it down effectively.
Wow. Now, another question I've got, which I just thought of, is what was Mirabelle's relationship to Sasha?
Sasha was one of the girls who lived in the village, of course.
How old was she, by the way?
Sasha was 15, 16 when
right
around she was born around the same year as Theo. They might not have been born the same month, day kind of thing, but around the same year. And they'd grown up together. She was a little bit older, of course, but with her being so close to Theo, she would tag along when they were going out together, and usually she was pretty happy. When Theobald had proposed, then she had some jealousy issues for a while. She felt she was going to lose her brother to him. You know, you're taking my brother, you're stealing my brother. And she finally set it on the no, you're gaining a sister. You're not losing a brother. And she took that very well. Then she turned around and they were very close. So it really is, when Sasha died, it wasn't just Theo who got hit. She lost her sister to be.
Lost her sister. I see. Well, that concludes my questions for today, but tune in next episode for the wrap up. We're halfway through the book, about halfway through the book, and we're trying to lay the groundwork for the broad view of it. And we'll get into that next time, right?
Sounds great.
Now, Carina Spears, how can people find your website?
Just look up acarinaspears.com, or you can find me on Facebook as Carina Spears or Carina Spears. And you can also find me on Twitter as @GearFalcon with an E in there.
All right. Good enough. I'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Rick.